Welcome back. For those of you who may have come in late, my name is Chris Amandus, and I serve as the chair of the Houston Wilderness Board of Directors in 2021. I want to thank all of you for attending today, either in person or virtually, to celebrate our 2021 Wildlife Award honorees and the recent activities of Houston Wilderness. The board chair position at Houston Wilderness is a 2-year position, and I stood at this same podium a year ago, last February. At that time, I never would have guessed that May of 2021 would be the next time I wore a coat and tie. I am pleased to report, however, that while most of us have been hunkering down in our pods and in our sweatpants for the last 15 months, the activities of Houston Wilderness have continued largely uninterrupted. And we've also made great progress on a number of our goals. Within the 13-county area around Houston, Galveston Bay, and the Gulf of Mexico, there are 10 diverse ecoregions that include coastal prairies, upland and bottomland forests, and a wide variety of wetlands and waterways. Houston Wilderness works with a broad-based alliance of business, environmental, and governmental interests to protect and promote these ecoregions. We accomplish this by connecting people to the ecoregions around Greater Houston through large-scale environmental policy initiatives. These initiatives include the 8-county Gulf Houston Regional Conservation Plan, the Texas Monarch Butterfly Flyway Strategy, the Port of Houston Trees for Riparian Enhancement of Ecosystem Services, which we refer to as the POH Trees program, and our collaborative grant organizing program. In undertaking these initiatives, we try to ensure that all of the stakeholders are represented at the table and that collaborative solutions are developed, supported, and most importantly, implemented. Over the last few years, we have used our annual luncheon to highlight these initiatives, and we're going to do so again here today. The Regional Conservation Plan, which maps out Houston Wilderness's overall strategy, has 3 key goals. First, we want to increase the amount of protected and preserved land in the 8-county region to 24% of land coverage by 2040. We call that our 24 by 2040 goal. As of last year, when I stood here, this fraction was 12.3%, and I am pleased to report that as of today, that fraction is up to 14.7%. Second, we want to increase nature-based stabilization techniques, such as low-impact development, living shorelines, and bioswales to 50% of land coverage by 2040. And finally, we want to provide research and advocacy to increase by 0.4% annually the amount of air quality benefits that we achieve through carbon absorption in native soils, plants, trees, and oyster reefs throughout the 8-county region. We plan to announce where we stand on this goal in June. Here today, we want to concentrate particularly on trees. Houston Wilderness is facilitating targeted, large-scale native tree plantings in conjunction with a variety of public and private partners around the region. This work would be much harder if it weren't for the pioneering efforts of our 2 honorees today, former Houston Congressman Gene Green and former Houston District Judge and Congressman Ted Poe. Both of these gentlemen supported funding and nature-based infrastructure for our waterways and for large-scale native tree plantings in our region long before it was cool. Those of you who attended last year's luncheon saw the 12 native trees we had set up in the foyer and had a chance to bid to take one of them with you and give it a good home. Houston Wilderness and our partners call these 12 species the super trees because of the extensive ecological services that they provide to our region. Among other things, they are highly effective in reducing air pollution, increasing stormwater absorption and infiltration, and sequestering carbon. In keeping with the progress that we've made this year in other areas, we have expanded that list to 14, and it now includes the sweet gum and water oak. The table sponsors today have the opportunity to choose where 10 of these native tree species from the super trees list will be planted in 5 locations within the Houston area. These plantings will contribute to both the Port of Houston Trees program and also the Resilient Houston program's goal to plant 4.6 million new trees by 2030. The one tree that you will not be able to plant right now is the slippery elm. The slippery elm is not currently commercially available in Texas. If you know a commercial tree nursery or are feeling particularly entrepreneurial, I encourage you to consider the slippery elm. With millions of these 14 super trees slated to be planted during the next decade, there is a market out there and it's hungry to be fed. So behind me is our Wildlife Award that we will be presenting momentarily. The figure atop the award is the great blue heron, which was selected because it is highly adaptive and can be found in a vast array of habitats in the 13-county area where Houston Wilderness operates. The great blue heron is one of the largest North American herons, standing up to 54 inches tall and with a wingspan of up to 7 feet. Great blue herons are most commonly found in fresh and salt marshes, swamps, estuaries, seashores, tidal flats, meadows, island shores, river and creek banks, and oxbow lakes, but they're also comfortable in human-made habitats. Houston Wilderness began our Wildlife Award program 8 years ago. Our first recipient was George Mitchell, and a wide range of recipients as follows. From time to time, we have also awarded a Wild Partner Award to organizations or companies that have worked with Houston Wilderness over many years. Today's awardees are former U.S. Congressman Gene Green and former Harris County District Judge and Congressman Ted Poe. Though they sat on different sides of the aisle in the House of Representatives, they are longtime friends and fellow alumni of the University of Houston School of Law. They worked closely for many years on a number of local initiatives to enhance the natural environment in the Houston area, including the cleanup of the Highland Acid Pit Superfund site. Congressman Green worked for over 40 years in the Texas Legislature and Congress, helping the greater Houston area on a variety of quality of life issues, including support for improved green spaces, more nature-based recreation, and cleaner water along many of our local bayous. He also spearheaded the Buffalo Bayou National Heritage Area designation. Harris County has dedicated a 250-acre park as Gene Green Park that is located in the district that Congressman Green long represented. Judge Ted Poe worked for over 20 years as a Harris County District Judge and then another 14 years in Congress representing a district adjacent to Congressman Green's. A strong advocate of environmental issues, Judge Poe was instrumental in bringing funding for Greater Houston for the forestation efforts along major roads and freeways throughout TxDOT's Houston district. He also encouraged green space improvements during his tenure as a district judge. We are now going to have a short video introduction to kick off the presentation of the 2021 Wildlife Award.
Hello, I'm Mayor Sylvester Turner, Mayor, City of Houston. I have attended Houston Wilderness luncheons many times in the past and always enjoy learning more about the wildlife awardees each year. But this year's honorees, former Congressman Gene Green and former Congressman Ted Poe, I know well, with their many years of public service and commitment to improving the greater Houston region. I had an opportunity to work with Congressman Gene Green for a few years when we both served in the Texas Legislature in the early 1990s, before he headed to the United States House of Representatives. I have known Judge Poe since his early days as district attorney and then judge in Harris County, before he then headed to Congress. And since then, I have worked with both Ted and Gene on numerous important issues for Greater Houston and Texas as a whole. Both honorees are well known and respected for their collaborative efforts to get things done for our region. They came together regularly to work with each other and often brought other legislators with them to create bipartisan legislation that benefited our large community. I remember so well how Judge Poe and Congressman Poe, I should say, and Congressman Gene Green have stood with this city after one disaster after another. Today, we honor them for their commitment to environmental issues in our region, from assisting with funding for thousands of large-scale native tree plantings along our freeways and roadways to support and preservation of our bayous, creeks, and river systems. They were also instrumental in working to provide federal support and funding in times of environmental disasters, both natural and man-made, that took place in our region during their long tenures in public service. When local mayors, city council members, county judges, and commissioners can rely on the commitment to cooperation from regional congressional delegations, a critical network of support is formed that helps impact the entire community that is being served, and the quality of life in our region is the better for it. Such was the case with Gene and Ted during their time in public office. The environment benefited, the people benefited, fellow public servants benefited, and our quality of life is the better for it. Congratulations, Congressman Green and Judge Poe, Congressman Poe, on the Wildlife Award. We all enjoy the ecological assets and environmental beauty in our region that you help to protect and promote. And from a friend to friends, congratulations, wish you well, and thank you for your service.
My name is Gene Green, and I served 26 years in the United States Congress, but I also served 21 years in the state legislature, the House and Senate. When I was in Congress, obviously environmental issues in a district that has a lot of industry. And I would tell a lot of my environmentalists, I said, we're not going to shut down those 5 refineries that are in our district. They pay good jobs, and I'll raise Cain with them. I want them to produce that product. It's safe because my constituents work there, and clean. But if we don't do it, then we'll have to import it for somebody else who will not go by our laws. You know, they'll send us the gasoline, the diesel, whatever, chemicals. And I have a blue collar district, and so that's why I wanted to make sure people had jobs for it. I wanted to make sure that we didn't pave over Buffalo Bayou. And a number of groups, whether it's the East End Chamber of Commerce and local groups, wanted to try and save some of the open space, and our district needed that. It's a very urban area, so we needed places where kids can go play baseball or soccer or whatever they want to do. And working with both the county commissioner at that time was Sylvia Garcia, who took my place in Congress, and I would get federal fundings and she would match it on a number of projects along Buffalo Bayou. The Tony Marone Park was a city park, and it still is, but we expanded it with federal money. And then Buffalo Bend, further out to the east, we were trying to get places where the neighborhood could utilize it, and you know, we did as best we can, and we got a lot of property done with that, and because it's also good for a park like Tony Marone. It's big enough you can do a lot of things with, and but we also wanted to know the history of Buffalo Bayou, and I introduced a piece of legislation to create the Buffalo Bayou Heritage Area, and thank goodness the Department of Interior and they did a great study on it, and a way that we can let people know, not only who live along the bayou, Buffalo Bayou and the port, that but some history of it. We did earmarks back then, and on a number of projects along the Buffalo Bayou, we would partner with the city, flood control, Harris County, and to match it so we could do that. And that's one of I'm proud of in my time to be able to do that. And but in working with my colleague Ted Poe, our districts, you know, were together. He had the area around me, and we got to know each other. I was a lawyer, but I never had a court case in his court, so we didn't have any problems getting along. Ted and I both had Greens Bayou in parts of our district, and Greens Bayou comes across from parallel to Beltway 8 on the north, and then it goes south and goes around to the east side, you know, that goes then to go down to the channel. and that was always a flooding problem. And we were able to get some money to have some open space for Green's Bayou. But we want it to be, it's not going to flood every year or maybe every 5 years. And during that time, we can use that land for something better and to help people know that there's, you can breathe fresh air.
My name is Ted Poe. I grew up here in Houston and spent some time at the courthouse as a prosecutor and 22 years as a judge, and then ran for office and became a member of the United States Congress. When I was in Congress, I was approached early on, about 2005, by the Greater Houston Partnership, and they wanted to talk about transforming the way the city of Houston and the county looks regarding vegetation. So, of course, I was interested in that and heard the concept that was very unique at the time to fund the planting of trees in public spaces. So I requested on the Transportation Committee, which I was on, about $25 million to plant trees in specific areas of Houston. Congress voted on that earmark, as they did in those days, and it was approved. And in the private sector, we worked with Apache, and they helped furnish trees. And the first place that they were planted was between Highway 59 and Intercontinental Airport. Several thousand, I think over 22,000 trees were planted. The local community, the Rotary clubs and other volunteer organizations all got out there on Arbor Day in the rain and planted, which is a perfect day to plant new trees, entire trees. Now that area looks tremendous. The trees are thick, they look great, they help the environment, and it's a good thing for our community to have all those trees. But we weren't through with that. So we had more money, and we decided to, how about putting trees along that beautiful corridor of Highway 59? TxDOT, local community, started planting trees along Highway 59. You see those trees all the way from Humble to almost downtown Houston, and now it's gone out past Humble to other parts of Harris County. So greening up the community. And that was a good thing. It makes the county look better, makes the city look better. People take it for granted for now, but some of us remember when there were no trees along the freeways. I call them now treeways. And one other thing that myself and others worked on very diligently was to change the mindset of building roads in Texas. And now, when freeways are built, there's vegetation along the side of the freeway, trees and other types of shrubs. When I was a judge in Harris County, I was a district judge in the criminal courts. I would use probationers on weekends. We would organize different cleanup groups. There were parks where people had littered and it had been there for a long time and it looked awful and nobody could come into the park because they wouldn't take their kids there. And so we would organize a detail. I'd let them do the organizing. We'd clean it up, we'd mow the park, clean up the park as best we could and make it presentable for people in the community. Working with Gene on multiple projects, all for our communities, happened over all of those years. His district and my district buttressed each other throughout the winding redistricting, gerrymandering of the legislature. But we were next to each other most of the time in our districts, from when I went in to the time that we both left. So we worked on projects together. One of those was the Superfund project down on the Highlands and the San Jacinto River, where the two meet. And at that location, years and years ago, there was a company that polluted the whole area. And then they went out of business. And Gene represented the water, I represented the shoreline, and we worked together to get that mess cleaned up and have now the responsible party, a new owner, to mitigate the pollution for the people that live on the land and the water as well. But we worked on that together.
The Highlands people who live on islands and up the San Jacinto River. And Ted and I, the river was probably one of our borders one time. The people on there fish, they crab, and they're in water that's dioxin, which is, and so it was, I went to, and Ted was the same thing, a lot of community meetings to try and see what we could do to do and have it. And as Ted said, we have a responsible party now, the owner of it. And although it's been a long haul for those folks who literally live in Highlands, Texas, and fish and crab along the river there. And but it's a success, bipartisanship, but also for the folks who live in that area.
And I believe it was an old sawmill that was on the land.
Well, there was another one. It was a sawmill up on Highway 90, and they. That was in your district.
What in yours?
Yeah, but they, didn't control their pollution, the water, and frankly, a lot of those folks who worked there were constituents to both of us. And but all we wanted to do, we want you to keep the jobs, but we don't want you to dirty up any more what we already have to do.
And that was pollution had been there was just getting worse over the years, and the cost. It's very expensive to clean it up, and that's why it was never done. Is because it was too expensive. Meanwhile, you got the water and you got the land and you got people all breathing this contaminated area. And now it will be, hopefully soon, to be cleaned up and better for everybody.
The leadership in both parties had never heard of two members of Congress in opposite parties asking for the same earmark. But we did, and that was funding for Highway 90 and some flyovers in that area, and also on the Beltway, a flyover there that the two of us asked for an earmark for funding for this specific project. It passed, and those projects were completed. All of that making the community better, but it was bipartisan, same earmark, and I didn't think it was a big deal that we asked for the same ones, but you had some people in both parties jumping out the windows that we were working together so closely.
What Ted said and was true. I think the Congress was controlled by the Republicans, and I was glad to have Ted on that side because that was the one to do it. And so I went to my ranking member, Obastar, who is from up north of Minnesota, and he handed it to one of his staff members, and their staff members called mine and said, "We can't do that, that's never happened." And so I said, "Let me talk to Obastar." And I said, "Jim, there's no reason this shouldn't be, this is crazy." And I hope that's not the first earmark that was bipartisan, but and I thought it was because on both sides they had, that's just not going to work, and it sure did, and we used it a couple other times.